Let's get the Republican response now from former Massachusetts governor, former presidential candidate, Mitt Romney. He joins us from San Diego, California this morning. Thanks for getting up so early, Governor. And let's get right to it. Jobs. That's the president's #1 priority. In the Republican response last night, Governor McDonnell said the same thing. Jobs is his and the Republicans' #1 priority. The president laid out a 4-part jobs bill. More lending to community banks for small businesses, a small business tax credit, a capital gains tax cut for small business investment, and a larger investment tax credit for businesses. Can you sign on to that jobs plan?
Well, I think you have to start off by saying that we've lost a year. The president has been president for a year. Instead of focusing on jobs during his first year, he instead focused on health care and a whole series of other things. And last night as well, you saw, if you will, the good, the bad, and who could possibly believe it. And the portions of his speech last night that dealt with jobs were encouraging. There were a number of things that I think you'll see Republicans say absolutely. Tax cuts, simplifying what's happening in Washington, particularly with regards to regulation, will be welcome. The decision to build additional nuclear power plants, to drill for coal for oil and gas, those are all very positive things, and I think Republicans will sign on to those things. But we want to see the president focus actually on jobs rather than go all over the board, which is what we saw last night.
Yet the president talked about his own jobs creation program from last year, the stimulus package. He says there would be 2 million fewer jobs in the country had that not passed.
Well, that falls in the category of who can believe it. You know that there's not been a single net new job created in the private sector over the last year, despite the fact that the president spent $787 billion. A record-breaking amount of money, and yet Americans continue to suffer. He told us that if he spent that kind of money, he could hold down the unemployment rate to 8%, and that otherwise it would go to 10. Well, it went to 10, and you have even more people that are continuing to look for work that are not part of those statistics. So,
Governor, hold on.
It was a lost year, an unfortunate year.
Let me just stop you there for a second. You know a lot about the economy. You served in the business world. Do you really believe that unemployment would be lower today if John McCain had been elected president?
Absolutely. There's no question but that what John McCain would have done was exactly what he said during the campaign, which is to get out to the American people more of their own money, to reduce taxes, and number 2, create incentives for businesses to actually grow, to expand, to invest. What's happened instead is a whole series of moves which have really scared the private sector to run into hiding. Everything from talking about raising taxes next year, raising capital gains taxes, cap-and-trade programs, imposing card check or unions on businesses that don't want it, a government takeover of health care. All those things have made America's businesses frightened about their future, and as a result made it much more difficult to create jobs.
The president did propose another fee on the big banks last week, and he addressed that in the speech last night. Listen.
But if these firms can afford to hand out big bonuses again, they can afford a modest fee to pay back the taxpayers who rescued them in their time of need.
You agree with that?
Well, I think it's always unfortunate when the president decides to scapegoat one small party within the overall crisis that government was a big part of creating. In this case, I think he's trying to change the subject. It's a political effort to try and take the heat off of his own administration for allowing the kind of bonuses that you're seeing. And frankly, I don't think that populism has ever created a great nation or a strong economy. I think this kind of targeted punishment is something the American people will see through.
One of the reasons the president had to give the speech he gave last night, of course, the tone he took last night was because of the loss he took in Massachusetts. Scott Brown, your new senator from the state of Massachusetts, some are already saying he's got presidential timber. Do you agree?
He's a great guy. Welcome into that arena. I tried it once, and he may try it as well. But, it's a difficult road to hoe, and what he's got right now is a big responsibility. As he said, he's the 41st senator, and his vote is going to be critical on things like health care. It's going to be critical across the board, I think, to make sure that this president really does what he spoke about finally, which is to focus on getting the American people jobs. And with a whole year lost, that's something which I think could not be more important.
Okay, Governor Romney, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, George.